Hi everyone. I'm doing this Facebook Live to discuss this current news that came out on getting input on an oversight board by Facebook. Earlier this year, the organization or the social media platform released guidelines for a draft charter. I think they released this last year, and then an updated version came out. So they're now in the process of doing a public consultation, inviting the public to answer a questionnaire and free-form questions. They also partnered with Baker McKenzie for this project. So the submission period will be open for 6 weeks, and they will start reviewing the submission. And then eventually we expect Facebook to release a report on global consultation, including submission for the creation of a Facebook content oversight board. Now, when you look at the oversight board, these are the things that they have in mind. So actually they release an infographic for this. So I think their idea for the oversight board is that they will review content on Facebook on how they will balance safety and free expression, because as we know, Facebook is now a channel and sometimes referred to by other personalities as a weapon since it can be used to attack people, attack institutions, and spread fake news. No? But at the same time, it can also be an empowering platform, giving opportunities to people, small businesses, among others, and even advocacies and causes, and getting support online. So the oversight board, they aim to, the intention, the idea is to provide oversight on the content decisions. And if Facebook has made decisions on certain content, this oversight board will be able to reverse it. And it is intended to become an independent authority outside of Facebook. So they visualize this to be an entity, to be a global, or they visualize this to be a global group of experts with diverse disciplines and commitment to safety and free expression. They will be obligated to the community and not to the company, and they will discuss issues on difficult and contested decisions, and especially on content that is subject to issues like artistic expression, hate speech, and bullying. So they're currently consulting with experts and have run global workshops, and they're now in the process of soliciting public proposal. And they will also review inputs from all external sources, maybe organizations will be giving their inputs to, and they will form an oversight board from there. And we expect that as this progress, they will provide everyone in the community on the board's design, publish a charter on its decision-making process, announce all the members, and whatever decisions this oversight board will come up with, it's going to be visible to everyone. So I think that's their idea insofar as this charter is concerned, as this group is concerned. So actually, it's a very interesting concept, and there are a lot of questions, of course, both from a positive, suspicious, and negative perspective. So like in this case for members, the membership of the board, so they are perceived to be experts with experience in content, privacy, free expression, human rights, journalism, civil rights, safety, and other relevant discipline. The list of members will always be public. So I'm curious on how they're gonna select these people, because of course everyone has their purpose for using Facebook. If you are a user of the platform, let's say assuming you have no agenda and you're not into any commerce or any other form of business or of strong perspective, then I wonder how can people make decisions, insofar as the content is concerned. I think it is important that the people who become part of the board are also active users of the platform, so that they can also feel the culture of the platform. Because if you're too what do you call that, motherhood, yung parang tipong not opinionated, or maybe trying to be leaning, or trying to be too neutral, it might have its own challenges. But I think more than anything, it is important for for people who will be part of this oversight board to be really active users of the platform. They, I mean, you're try to put some form of oversight or regulation to the users of the platform. So these people must be active users of the platform as well. Although that can have certain threats or certain concerns, no? But I think it is really, at least for me, I would like to see members to be active users, because if I see a member who is not an active user of the platform, then I don't feel that that person will have empathy to the users of the platform. So I think that is very important for me, no? If they will uh, if I will look at the people that they will consider to be part of this global community. So the cohort, they're thinking of membership focus and a large cohort for greater diversity of perspectives. I wonder on how they will do this also on a country by country basis, or it's going to be a global thing. I guess you cannot necessarily do it on a country by country, because maybe not too many issues would be surrounding a country that would require a cohort to overlook at certain decisions. On global, assuming that that everyone has enough perspective of global issues with regards to the use of the social media platform, no? So another question is, how can the first members of the board be chosen in a way that is transparent and reasonable? So initial appointments could be made by a chair or a selection committee commissioned by Facebook. So it seems they will be commissioning an entity who in turn will start looking for people, although they consider that they also consider it to have its own set of challenges. That is normal, but I guess, of course, it is usual that Facebook will have to work with its first set of people that they know of or that they can entrust with this process. And maybe from there, depending on the activeness of the people in the process, then they can come up with a more open program in terms of getting people to become part of that oversight. Especially, I'm sure that not everyone, I mean, very few people will be interested to get there, but definitely when you look at the issues that we are all confronting with regards to fake news, among other things, then definitely we want to see a process that is fair and reasonable to all parties concerned, but at the same time, of course, protecting them legally if possible, no? How should future selection be made to ensure continued diversity, expertise, and independence? So they feel that it should balance the need for the board's independence with the need for membership, reflecting the diversity of the community. Facebook could nominate members by majority, and the board could recommend candidates. So they're thinking of how they're gonna go through this process, no? Okay, so siguro maybe it's also age. Of course, diversity of age, diversity in terms of gender, and then of various communities. But I think age is an important factor. I think they should be aptly represented. They should be aptly represented to the platform. So if you're seeing millennials comprising the majority of Facebook users, I'm hoping to see an active millennial set of audience also being part of this oversight board and making sure that their voices are heard, no? Optimal term length for members. I think if they're starting for the sake of continuity, and of course giving room that there will be a lot of challenges on its first rollout, maybe they could start with 1 year or 2 years, and then later on they can decide whether they would go for 6 months or longer term, or they can be a 6 months probationary period or something like that, because maybe you can become part of the board, but if you don't have time to participate in board decisions, then it can be challenging too, right? And then they also have a discussion here on the independent review of content decisions on how should requests to the board be surfaced. So I know that there are news that were published before about how companies, individuals get hired just to screen content and the effects of the to the people who are screening all of this content. So, but it will be interesting to look at those that are deemed controversial and how Facebook makes decision on them and how they also analyze behaviors uh, that are identified with manipulation and like creating a warp type of reaction from an audience, that manipulated type of reaction. So how should the board select specific cases for consideration from the request it receives? This will be interesting, and I think so. There can be a lot of potential decision that this board will look at. So it will be interesting to see on how they're going to go about it. Like you can be curious, like if there's a coup d'etat happening in one country, bombings among other tragedies, and how they get shared online. How do you make sure that no manipulation of content will be created, like the use of fake photos, fake news, fake videos, trying to put down people, putting down politicians, or aggravating or hiding certain information from happening on the ground. No? How can the board ensure cultural sensitivity while also issuing decisions that will affect 2.3 billion people around the globe? So I guess since they cannot include everyone, so definitely they will still likely rely on the population of the user base and more or less get a balance of representation by education, knowledge, age, and gender. I think that is what I'm at least looking at. No? And then how can Facebook ensure the board's independent judgment? I think this will be interesting. I mean, right now they're just painting an objective perspective. But what if you will reach a situation that even if Facebook will not submit that content, but through the board's observation that there are behaviors that Facebook may have done or acted on that somehow become questionable. I'm curious on how that dialogue is that even the kind of discussion that can happen in this group, or is this group limited to whatever contested content be brought to the attention of the board? No? And then there's another question here on what will ensure the board's commitment to its purpose and values. So boys, safety, equity. I think at the end of the day, because people are of different cultures and most likely they cannot be at the same time zone, it will be hard for them to have virtual meetings. So most likely it's going to be a yes or no vote in a lot of the cases, assuming that people in the board have ample time to review the content or the issue concern. And maybe they will have a round or two of discussion, quick discussions, and then make a decision. Because, if there's a content decision, I mean, I think they have to resolve that within, 12 hours, 4 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours. I'm not so sure how much time are they giving, but, we're living in internet time, so definitely they must be quick decision makers as well, no? Because if they're slow and they want to go through with a lot of discussion, I don't think they're going to get anything done if they're going to be too bureaucratic with it, no? Too bureaucratic with it. Right level of transparency to give the public insight into the board's thinking. Of course, they need to make the decisions public, but there will be unpopular decisions and unpopular opinions. So that means that members of the board can also be, I guess they can also be subjected to bullying, no? If they have made certain decisions that are not popular with everyone, they can also be subjected to attacks, no? So I'm curious on how are they going to approach this, no? And then, how should the board ensure coherence as decisions from different cases and panels could result in inconsistent conclusion? So, of course, it says here that Facebook is ultimately responsible for making decision. However, they will come up with a system where the panel can also input or review cases that may affect policies that they have. So, I think the mere fact that they are open to dialogue to discuss these concerns, I think that's a good start. No? So if you're interested, when you review this document on getting input on an oversight board, they have a link here if you want to share your perspective. So let's take a look at this document. So it describes again the oversight board. So let's say we want to participate in this process. We ask the participants to say, yes, I am. So meaning if you're below 18, you can't. You're about, in this first section, we'd like to hear your thoughts about the members of the Oversight Board. So in your opinion, how many members should have the board in total? So it must represent, but at the same time, you know, you need to have a board, but if you have too many people on the board, it can also derail decisions. In fact, if you want to get a lot of things done, the fewer people working on it and are really focused, the better. So I think I'm gonna go for 20 or fewer. And then I need to start with, and then later on they can have, like in APEC, we have an experts committee, like we have a second expert committee, third expert committee. So I think you can have different experts, subcommittees later on, but I think the core should at least start with less than 20. And then when selecting individual board members, how important are each of the following qualifications? I think it's extremely important, the social media familiarity, educational background, and professional background. Well, you know, they represent, this represents different type of people. I think educational background, enough to say that you know what is right or wrong, that you're quite, that at least there's certain level of familiarity on legal matters are, I think that's quite important. And for professional background, I think that would be somewhat important because, you know, the community is very diverse and a lot of them are young. So I think it's really more having empathy and knowing people and looking at issues at an individual level. I think that is more, I think for me that weighs more. Cultural and linguistic knowledge, yes, I think that is quite important. And then now think about the board as a whole. How important is it that the board includes members with different backgrounds in each of the following ways? Nationality, I think nationality-wise, yeah, I think that is quite important. Educational background, yeah, that is quite important. Ideological or political views, well, somewhat important. Professional background, somewhat important. Religious views, somewhat important. Characteristics like gender and sexuality, yes, I think that is quite important. The last thing I want is to see a board that is either all women or all men. You know, I think you need to have some sense of balanced representation. Race or ethnicity, maybe I'm less sensitive to that, so I'm gonna go for somewhat important. Cultural and linguistic knowledge, yes, that is okay for me. Income level, somewhat important. And then they also have a question here. The Facebook will select the group of board members based on a set of qualifications that will be made public. Once the board is established, who should nominate future members of the board? Future members, I think for the public, it's quite difficult because, you know, as Facebook mentioned, they have billions of users. And the last thing you want is for certain candidates to manipulate. How can they get into the board? So I think what they can do is they can follow the format of international organizations on how they choose members. So usually, what I've noticed is that for organization institutions, they look at existing board members. They can also look at, of course, I think Facebook should have the capacity also to nominate, since they will not be able to influence who will be, since they don't have complete influence on who will be the final members of the board in the first place. And then I think they can also, I think they could also go to the community at large. I mean, or not exactly the public, but others. I think they could have a process somewhere where, like a wild card, like they can select people, something like that. So for others, I think, like an application. It has to be some form of an application process, where people are interested, they can apply. So rather than just the public nominating them, then there can be an application process where people can express their interest. Who should select future board members from the list of nominations? I think Facebook should. They can also look at um, existing board members. But I think if I think what they will only try to avoid is for anyone to vote on people that they have nominated. That's my only concern. So meaning, if a non-governmental organization has nominated someone to be at the board, and if they have a vote, if they're entitled to a vote, then they should not be able to select the people that they have nominated for. Something like that, to minimize conflict of interest or manipulation by certain parties. And then the board should remain fair and impartial when making decisions. To ensure impartiality, the board may need to set clear criteria preventing certain people from becoming board members. Okay, I agree with that. For example, current and former Facebook employees will not be allowed. Yes, because they may end up violating also privacy policies of their previous employer if they were past employees. So people who are financially invested in Facebook, I think when I say financially invested, my understanding of people who are financially invested in Facebook, maybe they earn from it, like maybe they have bought stocks. That's my understanding. They bought stocks. Current government officials, I think, should not be there. If they are financially invested, now I'm thinking about it, do they really have that conflict of interest or not? I'm not so sure. Like, if you're a stock broker, does that mean that you're not automatically qualified? Or a stockholder, does that mean you're not automatically qualified to serve on the board? Maybe not. So I'm changing my mind on that. But definitely current government officials should not be there. And I'm thinking of whether personalities that have been subject to controversial issues on the use of the platform, whether they should be nominated or not. No, so that's something that I'm thinking of as well. But for now, I think current government officials or people who have served government, no. And I think people who have served government should not qualify, because you're not really sure if they have conflict of interest. So people who have worked in government agencies, buying influential positions. Yeah. Okay. So meaning maybe you're something influential enough, no? Maybe you're occupying a position that gives you access to certain decision makers or people who can manipulate things, or who have access to resources that can manipulate things, no? So definitely, if you have worked before, then I don't think you should be qualified. Something like that, or at least at least from a perspective that you're connected to that government agency. So people who have uh, how should I say this? No? People, senior officials in government agencies, past officials, past senior officials in government agencies. Okay, so high ranking, senior, high ranking. Although I don't think they have time, but since they're asking for input anyway, might as well put that. Past senior, high-ranking officials in government agencies. Out of the entire board, smaller group of 3 to 7 members will be formed to make decisions on individual pieces of content. We will refer to these groups as panels, and to these individual pieces of content as cases. The board will select panel members of each case. In your opinion, which of the following consideration is important when selecting panel members? I think geographical location is important. Cultural and linguistic knowledge again. I can only choose one. Most important. Okay, so for individual pieces of content, I think geographic. Yeah, I think I'm quite sensitive to that. No? So there is an assumption that if they're, although in this case I'm making an assumption that if they belong to a certain geographic location, more or less there's that cultural knowledge. No? I'm at first I'm leaning towards cultural, but of course after seeing what happened recently on the news, where one of the famous travel networks mistaken one of our tourist spots, instead of attributing it to be made by Filipinos, to be made of another nationality. So I'm not as highly convinced on cultural or linguistic knowledge as the priority. No? You responded, it is most important for the board to consider geographical location when selecting panel members. In your opinion, is it more important that panel members come from that are diverse from one another, or that are relevant? So I think I will go for relevant. Okay. Oh, there's another one. Sige. The board's primary responsibility will be to make decisions on content cases. These cases will be relevant to Facebook's interpretation and implementation of its own rules and regulation. In your opinion, should the board be allowed to recommend changes to Facebook rules and policies? Yes, I think so. I think they should, recommend only, but of course it must be clear that at the end of the day, since the social media platform belongs to Facebook, then it is Facebook decision. And if they cannot come to an agreement, they just agree on a protocol on how to go about it, and not to make a public issue out of it. No? So, as they say, with great power comes great responsibility, from the Spider-Man movie. The board may review cases that are similar to one another based on issue of context. Based on issue or context, although these cases may be related, they will not be identical. Should the board be able to group related cases into a single review? Unless it is clearly identifiable, yes. But since there are many ways that you can manipulate content, and maybe each case or each scenario is different, so I would just put no for the meantime. For each case, Facebook will provide information to the board for additional context. However, board members may need to consult with experts. Who should board members, okay. After all, the board, okay. So since they cannot get members from every part of the world, language, group, culture, so who should they be able to consult? So I think they should be able to consult subject matter experts, think tanks, yeah, and research assistants. I think that's okay. It's best to have data when making decisions rather than just rely on gut feel alone, right? The board's decision on a case may affect certain people, groups, or industries who may wish to submit their opinions to the board for consideration. While reviewing a case, should the board be allowed to read written submissions of those opinions? I think they should. They should. Of the following, whose written opinion should the board be able to consider? By content, we need photos, videos, okay. Yeah, the people who reported it, the people who identified, the people who posted, yeah. Yeah, I think it's fair. Since they are one or the other connected with it. Over time, the board will be asked to make decisions on cases that are similar to cases it has reviewed in the past. When this happens, how important is it that the board take its past decisions into consideration? I think that is extremely important. You need to have consistency, and if there's a change in standard or a change of view, then that must be noted properly, especially if the board is recognizing that situations have changed on the way issues need to be analyzed, although not necessarily have to be tied down to it, especially if change of perspective or of analysis is necessary. The number of cases the board will review each year could range widely. The more cases the board reviews, the more decisions they can make, but the less time and research they can spend on each case. In your opinion, is it more important for the board to dedicate more time and research to each case, or to make more decisions each year? I think make more decisions, and since and you can get people to help out in the research. I think there's preliminary material for that. And if the board has adequate experience or adequate knowledge of the area, then they should not have difficulty in arriving at a decision much sooner, since they are a group. Or if they are still pending, then they can initially express their concern, what information they're lacking in that prevents them from making that decision. Then if additional content needs to be provided, then they can decide on it. But I think they should really focus more on making decisions, not to be a bureaucratic organization. Okay, governance of the Oversight Board. In your opinion, what is the maximum number of years a member should be able to serve on the board? Well, I appreciate experience, and I also appreciate historical knowledge, because they are very important. Somebody must be able to provide that, especially if there are new ones in the community. Although, of course, this is far-reaching because you're assuming that Facebook will be there for the next 10 years. But assuming that indeed that Facebook can last that long, I think it's good to have somebody who can stay there also for the long term. But I think they need to come up with certain percentage. Like, for example, 50% of the members of the board should be new, and then the other half can be repeaters or people who have extended their term. But definitely at any point in time, majority of the members of the board should be new people, at least 60%. How useful are each of the following methods for making sure that the board is acting in the public's best interest? Conflict of interest, well, maybe quite useful, but I think at the end of the day, it's the quality of their decisions that will matter. So I'm going to put somewhat useful for that right now. Review a minimum number of user cases each year. I think I want to see this person being productive. So I think that is more useful for me. Choose cases that will have the greatest public impact. Yeah, quite useful. But I don't like a celebrity board type of activities either. I think they need to decide on things that matter to the Facebook users community. Regular reports about trends and findings. Yeah, I think that's quite useful. Explain the reasoning behind decisions. Yeah, that's quite useful as well. This one I'm going to make it extremely useful. Each content case will be reviewed by a small group of 3 to 7 members, which will be called panels. In your opinion, should the identity of those panel members reviewing individual cases be publicly disclosed? I think for board members, it will be publicly disclosed, but for panels, I think it's okay. Yeah, I think it's okay. Well, you want to be included there, so I think that's part of the responsibility, right? Please explain why. Also, I think it's also being mindful that people will know the actions a panel member has taken. The actions, decisions a panel member has taken. Okay. Each panel's decision will be made public. Should the board also produce broader, publicly accessible report that summarizes? Yeah, I think that's good. Oh, this is a lot of work. I'm now trying to imagine how big this work will be. How frequently should the board produce these reports? Yeah, once every 3 months, I think it's okay. Or even once every 6 months, actually. Yeah, I think once every 6 months is better. In addition to the support Facebook will provide, who should supervise, administer, and support the board's operations? Okay. Who should supervise, administer, and support the board's operation? I'm not so sure of this, actually. Okay, of course, Facebook will initially provide the support, right? But I think the moment you get other people to participate in the expense, that those other organizations will in the process have and well, you can't help but somehow wonder if they have influence on the decisions and the concerns. So I would rather put as none of the above. Okay, thank you for sharing. The next three, would you like to continue? Okay, let's see. What will they give us? Okay, 3 essay. Oh, why do we have time? Okay, this section will comprise. Okay. All right. Let's see whether we'll be capable of answering. Okay. I think we mentioned this earlier on membership criteria. They must be representative of various age groups, gender, and nationality. Okay. Selection process must also be representative of the community population, of the Facebook community population. And what else did we indicate? Termination, when a board member acts on the behalf, decide in where there is clear bias favoring one party or another. one party or another. There is clear bias favoring one party or another. Because of his or her relationship with the parties in question. Parties or subject in question. Okay. And then terms of agreement for board members. I think they should agree on time, commitment, and including turnaround. For deciding on cases, right? And then we also want to see them as avoiding bias, no bias. Refrain from voting, commenting on cases where they are familiar with the parties in question. They are personally familiar on the parties in question. About the parties in question. About the parties in question, for those who generated the content, no? Did I give enough info here or is it lacking? Okay. Decisions of the board. Regarding board decision, case selection. Okay. I think we have okay, I may not be able to answer this anymore. Okay, so we're gonna declare where we're from. So we're gonna say we're from the Philippines. Give our name. And contact. We're gonna give our email address. No. And maybe shared publicly, yes. Yes. Okay. All right. So that's it. So if you also want to contribute to the discussion on this issue, I think it's very important because this public consultation is going to affect all of us. What they intend to do insofar as the future of Facebook is concerned, especially on deciding on the content that are controversial, where our country is not excluded from seeing Facebook being manipulated by parties. So I think Filipinos who are concerned on fake news, content manipulation, bullying, among others, should participate in this consultation. All right, so thank you very much for joining this live video.